90 years old, 9 decades, and if I'm being completely honest with you, I spent most of them learning lessons the hard way. My name is Margaret Ellis, and I'm here to tell you the things I wish someone had told me when I was still young enough to use them. People always ask me, Margaret, what's your secret? How did you make it to 90? And they're expecting me to say something about green tea or morning walks or staying positive. But the real answer? Regret. I've survived this long partly because I still have things left to make right. I was born in 1935, the tail end of the Great Depression. My earliest memories are of scarcity. Not just money, though we had little of that, but scarcity of permission. Permission to dream, permission to want more, permission to be something other than what the world had already decided you were. My mother used to say, Margaret, pretty girls don't need ambition. She wasn't cruel, she was just a product of her time. She loved me the only way she knew how, by preparing me for a world that wanted me small, and I believed her. For a very long time, I believed her. I was 19 when I got married. Harold Ellis. Broad shoulders. Good job at the plant. Never missed church on Sunday. Everyone said I'd done well. My mother cried at the wedding, and not just from joy. She cried because she was relieved, like I'd been a problem she'd finally managed to solve. Harold wasn't a bad man. I want to be fair to him. He worked hard. He didn't drink. He kept the lights on and the refrigerator full. By every measure anyone around us used, he was a good husband. But he never once asked me what I thought about anything. Not about where we'd live, not about how many children we'd have, not about what I wanted from this one life I'd been given. My opinions were decorative, nice to have around occasionally, but never load-bearing. We had 4 children in 5 years, 4 beautiful, exhausting, wonderful children, and I loved them. Lord, I loved them. But somewhere in the middle of all those diapers and fevers and packed lunches, I disappeared. Not dramatically, not all at once, just gradually, quietly, the way a candle burns down when no one's watching. I had wanted to be a nurse. I'd dreamed about it since I was 12 years old, reading stories about Florence Nightingale in the school library. I wanted to help people, not in a vague, abstract way, in a specific roll up your sleeves, hold someone's hand when they're scared kind of way. But nurses worked odd hours. Nurses weren't home for dinner. Nurses had careers, and careers were for women who hadn't found anyone to marry yet. So I put that dream in a box, and I pushed it to the back of a shelf, and I told myself I'd forgotten it was there. I hadn't forgotten. You never forget. The years went by the way years do when you're busy, quickly and without asking. The children grew up. Harold retired, and then one Tuesday morning in 1987, Harold sat down in his recliner after breakfast, closed his eyes, and never opened them again. Heart attack. He was 54 years old, and I sat in that house surrounded by 50 years of accumulated living, and I thought, now what? I was 52 years old, and I had no idea who I was outside of being someone's wife and someone's mother. The grief was real. I want you to understand that. I mourned Harold, but mixed in with the grief, if I'm being honest. And at this age, I've decided honesty is the only thing worth spending time on. Mixed in with the grief was something else. Relief. Not because he was gone, but because for the first time in my adult life, I could choose. I could wake up in the morning and decide. Not negotiate, not defer, not make myself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. Choose. I was 55 when I went back to school, nursing school. People thought I'd lost my mind. My oldest daughter begged me not to embarrass her. My son said it wasn't practical. Neighbors whispered. And I sat in classrooms with 20-year-olds who called me ma'am, and I studied harder than I'd ever studied in my life. I graduated at 57, worked as a nurse for 18 years, and every single day I walked into that hospital, I felt like I was finally living in the right life. But here's the thing I didn't expect. The lessons that mattered most didn't come from the choices I made late in life. They came from watching people die. When you work in healthcare long enough, you sit with a lot of people at the end. And I want to tell you what I observed, because nobody in all my years, nobody held my hand and whispered, "I wish I'd worked more." Nobody said, "I wish I'd played it safer." Nobody said, "I'm glad I spent all that time worrying about what people thought of me." What they said, what they always said, came down to the same few things. They wished they'd been kinder, not nicer, kinder. There's a difference. Nice keeps the peace. Kind tells the truth. Kind shows up when it's inconvenient. Kind remembers that the other person is also fighting a battle you know nothing about. They wish they'd forgiven sooner, not for other people's sake, for their own. Because carrying a grudge for 30 years doesn't hurt the person you're angry at. It just quietly ruins you. It takes up space that could have held something beautiful. They wish they'd stayed curious. The ones who lived fully right up until the end, and I've seen it, the ones whose eyes were still bright at 90, 95, were always the ones who never stopped asking questions, who read books that challenged them, who talked to people unlike themselves, who let the world keep surprising them instead of deciding they'd already figured everything out. They wish they'd said the words out loud. "I love you, I'm sorry, I'm proud of you, thank you for everything." Simple sentences, tiny collections of syllables that people let rot unsaid for decades, because the moment never felt right, because it felt too vulnerable, because they assumed the other person already knew. They didn't always know. Say the words. And the biggest one, the one I heard more than any other, they wished they'd trusted themselves more. They'd spent entire lifetimes deferring to other people's judgment about their own lives, letting parents decide, letting spouses decide, letting fear decide. And at the end, they could see so clearly all the moments they'd had an instinct, a quiet knowing, a small voice that said, "This isn't right for you." And they'd overridden it again and again and again. Your gut is smarter than you give it credit for. It's been paying attention even when you weren't. Learn to listen to it before it's too late to act on what it's telling you. I'm 90 now. My knees argue with me every morning. My memory occasionally misplaces things. But my mind is clear, and I want to tell you something from this side of 90 years. Life is not long. I know it feels that way when you're young, when a week feels like a month and a year stretches out like a country road. But I'm standing here looking back at 90 years, and I'm telling you, it went fast. It went so impossibly, unfairly fast. And most of it, the texture of it, the parts that actually mattered, didn't happen at the big milestone moments. Not at weddings or graduations or promotions. It happened in the ordinary Tuesday afternoons, in the kitchens and the car rides and the slow evenings on the porch, the moments you forgot to pay attention to because you were too busy waiting for something more important to happen. Nothing more important was coming. That was it. That was the thing. Stop waiting to start living. Stop waiting until you're thinner, richer, more certain, more ready, less afraid. You will not be less afraid. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is being afraid and doing it anyway because you've decided the thing matters more than the fear does. Take the trip. Have the conversation. Apply for the thing you think you're not qualified for. Ask the question you've been too embarrassed to ask. Tell people you love them out loud, with your whole chest, without waiting for the perfect moment. Make peace with the people you've been quietly at war with, not because they deserve it, because you do. Stop trying to be understood by everyone. Some people will never understand you, and that's all right. You're not for everyone. Find your people, the ones who see you clearly and love you anyway. Hold on to them like they're rare, because they are. And please, please, be gentler with yourself than I was with myself. I spent 30 years talking to myself in ways I'd never speak to another human being, calling myself foolish, ungifted, too late, too old, too much, not enough. It was cruelty dressed up as honesty. You are not behind, you are not too late. There is no schedule, there is only today and what you choose to do with it. I carried nursing in my heart for 36 years before I let myself pursue it. 36 years of telling myself it wasn't practical, it wasn't realistic, it wasn't allowed. And then I did it, and it was the best thing I ever did for myself. It's not too late. Whatever it is you've put in a box and pushed to the back of a shelf and told yourself you've forgotten about. You haven't forgotten. Go get it. I'm 90 years old. I've buried a husband, watched children grow into strangers and back into friends, held hands with hundreds of people as they left this world. And what I know all the way down in my bones, is this. The only life worth living is the one that's actually yours, not the one that was handed to you, not the one someone else designed. The one that fits the specific, strange, irreplaceable shape of who you are. You are not too old, you are not too late, you are not too broken, you are just in time. Now go.